very particular about the pixie haircut because I obviously wear one and have been wearing one for so many years, and I've had so many different versions. You really want to determine what is the top and what is the underneath and what effect they want their pixie haircut to have. But if your pixie, you want it to be leaner, say they have really thick hair and they're going for that true pixie look, and by true pixie I just mean a shorter pixie haircut, then you're going to want to take your section a little bit more narrow on the top, cutting out more of the underneath. Because what that's going to do is that's going to collapse your shape more. So the underneath will be shorter and there will be less hair to kind of work around through the top. If you're taking your section more narrow above the parietal ridge, or right at or above the parietal ridge, you're removing a lot more of that weight underneath. So I'm not leaving a ton of hair underneath here, but I'm not leaving too little of hair underneath there. So whatever I do on this side, I want to make sure I section her out on the other side the same, and we're just going to do a horseshoe section through the back. If you want this section to be even fuller here, you can take that section even lower and incorporate more of her crown. If they have really thick hair and you feel like this can kind of hang over, because you're really looking at where you want that to kind of hang over and hit. So I brought it down to almost the bottom of her crown. So if this is the top of her crown and this is the bottom of her crown, it's just above the bottom of her crown. But like I said, it's always good to include that hair and save it for later if you're worried about cutting too much or wanting more fullness. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a radial section from behind the ear all the way across that top section. So if you look at where her ear is and then you go up from there, that's typically about kind of where the top of the crown is, and incorporate that entire crown section in its own section. And now I want to find her bang section, because the reason I divide these three sections and I separate them out, so everything above the parietal ridge is going to get divided into three sections: the crown, the midsection, and her fringe section. Now I'm going to take this side, combing it all into my hand, pushing up and seeing where that fringe section breaks off from that side section very naturally, just like so. You want to make sure that when you're working with the razor that you have a really great cutting lotion. I have mentioned this one several times because it's just my new favorite. And when you're combing the hair out of the way, because like I said, I don't necessarily part all of the hair off down here, I'm using my thumb to kind of keep my comb as far away from the section that I'm working in as possible. And if you need to, you can always go in and actually do a little bit of channel cutting, is because her hairline is so thick in comparison to someone's actual hairline. You can really angle in at her ear, get that soft feathery texture, and almost work rounded, almost like you're going in around like her ear, exactly the way she wants it. Now as we work in our diagonal back this way, I'm going to start to take hair from the underneath, okay? So now I want to consider, not only do I want what I want around her ear here, but around her ear here, and also the hairline here if she has. So for myself, sometimes I'll take this a little bit shorter and work with a little bit of the edge of my blade, kind of just right there, just in the back of her ear. So this hair essentially is going to be a bit shorter than that hair underneath, because I'm over directing it straight out from this point and over directing the rest back. And the reason I want this part to be a little bit shorter here is because short hair pushes long hair. There's going to be lots of texturizing opportunities in here, but it's hard for me not to just go at it right away. But I kind of want there to be a disconnection from this underneath to where this top kind of hangs over top of it. And then as I'm working my way down, I notice I'm pulling it straight out, making sure it really hugs in to the head. And this last little bit on the nape, I do lift my fingers up slightly towards where I'm cutting, right here. because I really do want this to have like a nice disconnected feel to it from that top portion. And what I notice is as I'm working down towards the nape, I do over direct this bottom part. So there's a little bit of extra length through that nape area, and everything is kind of tightening it to the nape right there. And just pull out towards you to see, make sure, and you can kind of push the hair against her face to see where that is kind of sitting right on her eye and right on her face shape. And I can afford to lose just a little bit more length. So what you're going to do is just use lots of tension with the razor, and it's almost just like a tiny little trim. And this is a really nifty triangle, because then we can kind of decide what we want to do with this triangle later on. But I like the haircut to naturally find that triangle. So we're going to set that triangle aside, because I'm going from the edge of here down toward the corner of her nape over here. So I'm going from the edge of here down to the corner of her nape here. And it'll automatically have this beautiful little triangle that we're going to save for later. So I'm going to collect that part in my hands but come straight out from the head and use it as my guide, knowing that the section that I'm cutting is just a bit shorter because I'm over directing that underneath part. And that's key, because these little short hairs in this second section are going to push those longer hairs underneath. So even though I'm working a round section around her head, and they like to tell you to keep her head up straight, and that's all good to maintain symmetry. So don't be afraid to move their head around, but the only thing is you have to do that when you have that level of comfortability of knowing how to create that round shape, because essentially everywhere we're pulling out her head, we're not over directing a ton, just in certain areas, but it's traveling around her round head shape. So you can see how I'm running out of room in the bottom, and I can also see how it's like just connecting through beautifully. So it helps me to check my shape on the other side as I progress through, because as I'm working, I'm just running out of hair, which is lovely, because that means we're almost there. So I can really see as I'm cutting what I have left to cut. And as it connects from the top, you can literally see right there. And we've completed pretty much the back, and naturally, because of the way that we took that section, we have this little triangle here. So that's when you can decide, if they don't have a lot of hair up here, you can drop this down and look at it and see what you want to do with this piece. Look at their perimeter and see if you need this piece to help create more roundness, so that this has more disconnection right here from the hairs underneath it, right? To create that roundness lower, right? You would just see the roundness of the shape and then it tucking in with some hair right there. And it's almost, if you think about it, if you hold your blade at a 45, you're kind of creating a slight little 45 over top of those pieces to kind of push them in, right? I'm really just kind of over directing this section up here and kind of doing these like C scooping motions to kind of like soften up that hairline. And at any point you think you've got too much, let go, drop it, comb it out, and see kind of where you're at so that you don't create any holes. And if you wanted to, you could go from short to long, making it a little bit shorter in the center and a little bit longer on the edges. And your perspective and what you want to see on this pixie haircut is kind of it's all in all those little details. And so even though it's disconnected, it's just these little wisps hanging over, just so pretty, and establishing the length here. So next section, elevating higher, looking at the underneath, looking at your guide, nice big open stroke, letting that fall away. So you can see it's a little bit harder to cut up here, and that's when you would move her head towards you a little more, a little more, a little more, and that's how you get that elevation. And so if I'm building strength for the rest of the hair to sit on top of, I'm typically building strength with my shears. Some people that have like just a lot of hair on their head really, really, really appreciate when their pixie is completely texturized and deep, deep, deep point cut all over.